The alarm bell screamed through the corridors of Kepler's Rest, but Ambassador Vitha knew they would not save her people. Her 4 delicate hands shook as she pressed them against the communication console, watching the enemy ships grow larger on the viewing screen. The Korech had come with 50 warships, each one bigger than anything the Peaceful had ever built. How long until they reach us? She asked Chief Engineer Morton, though she already feared the answer. 20 minutes, maybe less, he replied, his usually calm voice cracking with fear. Their weapons are charging. Ambassador, we need to evacuate. Bethara looked around the control room of their trading station. For 30 years, Kepler's Rest had been a place of peace and commerce. Ships from dozens of different species came here to trade goods, share knowledge, and build friendships. They had built it as a symbol of everything they believed in. Now the Korech were going to destroy it all. Have you sent the distress call? She asked. Yes, but the nearest council peacekeeping force is 3 weeks away. The Korfek will have us processed and shipped off to their slave worlds long before help arrives. Vithara closed her eyes. The Vanni had evolved on a world with no predators, no wars, no violence. They had joined the galaxy, believing that all species shared their love of peace. The Korech had taught them how wrong they were. This raiding fleet had already destroyed 2 Vanni colonies. Thousands of her people were now slaves. In Korech minds, send another message, she said quietly, to the humans. Morton looked shocked. The humans, but Ambassador, they only joined the council 6 months ago. They have barely any ships. What could they possibly do? I don't know, Vithar admitted, but they are the only ones close enough to help. Their patrol fleet was reported in the Zeta sector yesterday. That's only 2 days from here. A patrol fleet, Morton said sadly. Probably 3 or 4 small ships. The Corps will brush them aside like insects. Bethara began typing the emergency message. Anyway, she had met the human ambassador once, a woman named Sarah Martinez, who had seemed kind but oddly intense. There had been something in her eyes that reminded Vithura of the old predator species, the ones that most civilized worlds had moved away from, but humans claimed to be peaceful traders and explorers, just like the message was simple. Kepler's Rest under attack by Korek raiding fleet. 50 enemy warships. Request immediate assistance. Will be overrun within hours. Please help. She sent it on all emergency frequencies and then sat back in her chair. On the screen, the Korfak ships were close enough now that she could see their weapon ports opening. The leader of this fleet was Commander Thakmore, brutal warrior who had personally overseen the enslavement of 6 different species, all civilians, to the escape pods. She announced over the station's communication system, "This is not a drill. Repeat, all civilians to escape pods immediately." But even as she said it, Vithara knew it was hopeless. The Korek were too fast, too well-armed. Their ships would catch the escape pods before they could reach safety. They would become slaves, and Kepler's Rest would become another Korek trophy. First energy blasts hit the station's outer shields. The lights flickered and Vithara felt the deck shake beneath her feet. The Korek were not interested in capturing the station intact. They wanted to break the Vanni resistance quickly and completely. Shield generators down to 60%, Morton reported. They're targeting our weapon systems. First, what weapon systems? Vithara thought bitterly. The station had a few defensive turrets designed to stop pirates and asteroids. Against a Korak warfleet they were useless. More blasts hit the station, the lights went out completely, and emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in a red glow. Vithara could hear the sound of metal tearing and atmosphere venting into space. The Korak were being thorough. Ambassador Morden said urgently, "I'm getting a response to our distress call." From the Council, no from the humans. Vithara's heart skipped. What do they say? Morin read from his screen. Message received. Help is coming. Hold position. Do not surrender. Signed, Admiral Sarah Chen, Human Fleet Command. Admiral. Vithara was confused. I thought they only had a patrol group in this sector. That's what the intelligence report said. Morden agreed. Maybe they promoted someone for this mission. Another massive blast rocked the station. This time the deck plates buckled and sparks flew from several control panels. The Korfak were getting closer and their weapons were getting more accurate. Attention, Vanny, a harsh voice came over the communication system. It was Commander Thakmore himself. This is your only warning. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make you suffer before you become our slaves. Vithara looked at Morin. The engineer was a gentle soul who had never heard anyone in his life, but now his face was set with determination. Send a reply, he said. Tell him we're still here. Shield generators down to 20%. Another technician called out. Hull breaches on levels 7 through 12. We're losing atmosphere fast. The escape pods were launching now, small silver dots fleeing into space, but just as Vithara had feared, the Korak fighters were already moving to intercept them. She watched in horror as green energy beams reached out to disable the fleeing ships. Her people would not even have the mercy of death. How long until the humans arrive? She asked. Morton checked his calculations. If they left immediately after receiving our message, and if they're really only 2 days away, 36 hours at the earliest, we'll be dead in 2 hours. Another technician said quietly. Vithara nodded, but something inside her refused to give up. The human message had been so confident, so certain. Help is coming. Do not surrender. As if Admiral Chen knew something that Vithara did not. The station shook again, more violently. This time the main power grid was failing, and life support was running on backup systems. The Korfak would board them soon, and then the real horror would begin. Vithara had heard the stories from other survivors. The Korak liked to make examples of those who resisted. Incoming transmission, Morden said. Suddenly, it's from the human fleet. Put it through. A new voice came over the speakers, calm and professional. Kepler's Rest. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the human fleet. We have received your distress call and are en route to your position. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. Hold your position and do not surrender. We are bringing adequate forces to resolve this situation. 18 hours, better than 36, but still too long. And what did adequate forces mean? 3 ships, 5. However many they had, it would not be enough against 50 Korak warships. But as the station continued to shake under enemy fire, and as her people continued to flee in their tiny escape pods, Vithara found herself holding on to that calm, confident voice. The humans were coming, somehow. That made the terror a little easier to bear. She just hoped some of them would still be alive when the humans arrived. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, staring at the message that had just arrived. Around her, the usual sounds of a warship at work continued. Officers gave quiet orders, computers hummed, and somewhere in the distance she could hear the rhythmic steps of Marines doing their morning exercises. Ma'am. Commander Jackson, her second in command, was waiting for her response. "Thay distress call." Sarah read the message again. 50 Korak ships attacking a peaceful trading station. She had read the intelligence reports about the Korak. They were slavers, raiders, and bullies who picked on species that could not fight back, the kind of enemy that made her job both necessary and satisfying. "Signal the fleet," she said calmly. "All ships to combat readiness. We're going to war." Jackson blinked. "Ma'am, should we not contact the Galactic Council first, perhaps negotiate?" Sarah looked at him with the expression that had earned her the nickname Ice Queen among the younger officers. "Commander, 50 armed warships are attacking civilians. What exactly would you like to negotiate?" "Of course, Admiral. I'll signal the fleet immediately." As Jackson moved to carry out her orders, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had been very polite to humanity since they joined the Galactic Council. Very careful, very diplomatic. Most species seemed to think humans were just another peaceful race of traders and explorers. They had no idea what humans actually were. The training exercise had been her idea. 200 ships and 50,000 personnel conducting routine maneuvers in the Outer Rim territories. The Council had been told it was a way for humanity to practice space operations in their new fleet. What they had not been told was that this was a fully armed battle fleet, equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. Fleet signals ready, Admiral Jackson reported. "Put me through to all ships." The main screen lit up with dozens of smaller screens, each showing the bridge of a different human ship. Captains, commodores, and ship commanders looked back at her. Some were young, some were old, but all of them had the same look in their eyes. They were warriors, and they had been waiting for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, "we have received a distress call from Kepler's Rest peaceful trading station operated by the Villani is under attack by a Korak raiding fleet. 50 enemy ships unknown. Number of civilians at risk." She could see the change in their faces. The boredom of training exercises was gone, replaced by cold professional focus. "Korak are slavers," she continued. "They capture entire populations and sell them to the highest bidder. They have already destroyed 2 Vanni colonies. Today they made the mistake of attacking civilians while humanity was nearby." Captain Rodriguez of the carrier Valkyrie spoke up. "Rules of engagement, Admiral. The Korak have been given the opportunity to withdraw. When we arrive, we will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will destroy them." Sarah's voice was ice cold. "We are not peacekeepers. We are not negotiators. We are the hammer, and the Korak have made themselves the nail. Time to target?" asked Commodore Kim from the battleship Titan. 18 hours at maximum burn. I want the fleet in full battle formation when we drop out of hyperspace. Carriers launch fighters immediately upon arrival. Destroyers form hunter-killer groups. Battleships target their largest vessels. We go in hard and we go in Fast, the screen filled with acknowledgments from her captains. Sarah could see the excitement building. In their eyes, humanity had not fought a real war in over 50 years. Their military had been preparing, training, and improving, but always in simulations and exercises. Now they would find out if all that preparation had been worth it. Admiral Commander Jackson said quietly, the intelligence report suggests that Corvax ships are quite advanced. Their weapons technology is supposed to be among the best in the galaxy. Sarah nodded. According to the reports, yes. What the reports don't mention is that Corvax ships are designed for raiding and intimidation. They're built to fight civilians and lightly armed peacekeepers. They've never faced a fleet designed from the ground up for war. She turned to look out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, the Vanni were fighting for their lives against an enemy that saw them as nothing more than merchandise. The galaxy had grown comfortable with this. Species like the Korek were tolerated because stopping them would require violence, and most galactic civilizations had moved beyond violence. Humanity had not. Fleet reports ready for hyperspace jump, the navigation officer announced. Take us to war, Sarah ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the human fleet entered hyperspace. 200 ships moving in perfect formation, like a school of predatory fish heading toward feeding grounds. In the fighter bays, pilots were already suiting up and running final checks on their weapons. In the marine barracks, soldiers were loading ammunition and sharpening knives. In the engine rooms, technicians were pushing the reactors to maximum output. The Corps thought they were facing a helpless trading station protected by a few light patrol ships. Instead, they were about to encounter the most advanced military force humanity had ever assembled. Sarah walked to her command chair and sat down, watching the hyperspace readings on her screens. 18 hours to reach Kepler's rest. 18 hours to prepare for humanity's first real battle since joining the galactic community. She thought about the message she had sent to the Alt. Do not surrender. We are bringing adequate forces. They probably thought adequate forces meant a small squadron of human ships, maybe 5 or 6 vessels at most. They could not imagine that any species would respond to a distress call with a full battle fleet. But then most species had never been in a position where genocide was just another word for Tuesday. Most species had never spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Most species had never looked at the universe and decided that the strong had a duty to protect the weak no matter the cost. Admiral, the communications officer, called out, "We're receiving updates from long-range sensor. The situation at Kepler's rest is deteriorating. The station is heavily damaged and multiple escape pods have been captured." Sarah's jaw tightened. Captured escape pods meant prisoners. Prisoners meant slaves. The Corvax were already beginning the process that had destroyed so many other civilizations. "Can we go any faster?" she asked the navigation officer. "We're already at maximum burn, ma'am. Any faster and we risk damaging the engines." "Damage them," Sarah said simply. "We can fix engines. We can't bring back the dead." "Yes, ma'am." Increasing speed to 110%. Around the bridge, warning lights began to flash as the ship's engine strained beyond their normal limits. Sarah could feel the deck vibrating beneath her feet as the Indomitable pushed itself harder. than it had ever gone before. Somewhere ahead of them, the Korfak were probably celebrating their easy victory. Another peaceful species broken, another population ready for the slave markets. They had no idea that their actions had just declared war on the one species in the galaxy that still remembered how to fight. Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. The Korfak wanted to play the old game of predator and prey. They were about to learn that humanity had never stopped being predators. They had just been waiting for the right prey to come along. Commander Th. Moore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Blood Reaper, and admired his work. Kepler's rest was now a broken shell, its outer sections torn open and venting atmosphere into space. They had fought with surprising courage for such a weak species, but courage meant nothing against superior firepower. Status report, he growled to his second in command. The station is secure. Commander, we have captured 3,000 from the escape pods. Another 1,000 died during the assault. The survivors will fetch good prices at the Nexus slave markets. Thakmore nodded with satisfaction. 3,000 slaves would make this raid quite profitable. The Korak Empire needed workers for its mining colonies, and the Vanni were known to be intelligent and hardworking. They would adapt to slavery better than some species. What about their distress calls? They sent messages to the Galactic Council and to the humans. The Council's nearest peacekeeping force is weeks away. As for the humans, his aide shrugged. They are new to space. Probably have a few patrol ships at most. Humans, Thakmore repeated, tasting the word. He had read the intelligence reports about humanity's recent admission to the Galactic Council. Another species of peaceful traders and diplomats, much like the galaxy seemed full of such weaklings these days. Commander, his sensor operator called out, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts. Well, how many? 3, no 5. Wait. Operator's voice became confused. Commander, I'm reading over 50 contacts. Maybe more. That frowned. That was far more ships than any council peacekeeping force. Are you certain? The signatures are getting stronger. Whatever's coming, it's big on screen. The main view screen showed empty space around Kepler's rest. The wreckage of the station drifted slowly in the void, surrounded by the dark shapes of Korak warships. Everything looked normal. Then space began to tear. The first ship that emerged from hyperspace was massive, easily twice the size of Thakmore's flagship. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered with weapon ports. Before Thakmore could process what he was seeing, more ships appeared, dozens of them, then hundreds. Get me a count, he snapped. The sensor operator's voice was shaking. 200 ships, Commander, maybe more. They're still coming. 200 ships. That was not a patrol force. That was not a peacekeeping mission. That was a battle fleet. The human ships moved with a precision that made Thakmore's stomach clench. They formed perfect battle lines, their weapons already charging, their fighters launching in coordinated waves. This was not the confused response of a peaceful species caught off guard. This was the smooth, practiced movement of warriors who knew exactly what they were doing. Communications, Thor barked, get me whoever's in charge of that fleet. Moment later, a new voice came over the bridge speakers. It was calm, professional, and utterly cold. Korak vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the human fleet. you have attacked a peaceful civilian station and taken prisoners. You have 60 seconds to cease all hostile actions and withdraw from this system, or we will consider you enemy combatants. Dakmore stared at the view screen. The human fleet had spread out into a formation that surrounded his ships. Completely, there was no escape route, no tactical advantage he could exploit. They had appeared from hyperspace in perfect position to destroy his entire force, but the Korak Empire had conquered dozens of worlds. His ships had weapons that could crack planets. Surely these newcomers, however many ships they had, could not match Korak military might. Human Admiral, he replied, putting as much authority into his voice as possible. I am Commander Thakmore of the Korak Empire. You are interfering with a legitimate military operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. There was a pause. Then the human voice returned, and it was even colder than before. You chose violence, we perfected it. The human fleet opened fire. Thakmore had been in dozens of battles. He had seen energy weapons tear through ship holes, watched torpedo explosions tear vessels apart, witnessed the chaos and confusion of space combat, but he had never seen anything like this. The human attack was not chaotic, it was not desperate, it was surgical. Coordinated volleys of energy beams reached out from the human ships, each one precisely targeted. Thakmore watched in shock as 3 of his destroyers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that seemed to cut through their shields like they were not even there. Return fire, he screamed. His ships tried to respond, but the humans had already moved. Their formation shifted like a living thing, smaller ships darting between his vessels while the larger ones maintained a deadly crossfire. Korak energy beams lashed out but hit only empty space where human ships had been. Moments before, more Korfak ships died. The cruiser Bone Crusher exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the bridge of the Blood Reaper, the destroyer pack. Hunters tried to flank the human formation only to run straight into a wall of torpedo fire that reduced them to scrap metal. How are they doing this? Dakmore demanded. His tactical officer was frantically working at his console. Their ships are faster than ours, Commander, more maneuverable. And their weapons, he paused, staring at his readings. Their weapons are incredibly advanced. Our shields are stopping maybe 30% of their firepower. On the screen, Thakmore could see human fighters swarming around his remaining ships. They moved like insects, impossible to target, striking with precision before disappearing back into the chaos of battle. Each attack took out weapon systems, engines, or life support. The human pilots were not just trying to win, they were trying to capture his ships intact. Commander, the communications officer's voice was full of panic. The Voidstalker is requesting permission to surrender. Denied. Bakor snarled. We are Korfak. We do not surrender to anyone. But even as he said it, he could see that the battle was already over. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships were scattered, their formations broken, their crews demoralized. The humans had done in 20 minutes what should have taken hours. The worst part was that the human fleet barely seemed damaged. A few ships showed scorch marks from Korfak weapons, but none had been destroyed. It was as if the Korak had been fighting children, and now the adults had arrived. Korthak Commander, the human admiral's voice came over the speakers again. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting and we will finish what you started. That looked around his bridge. Half his officers were dead or wounded. His ship's weapons were offline and his engines were failing. Through the view screen he could see human marines preparing to board his remaining vessels. For the first time in his career, Commander Thakmor of the Korak Empire did something he had never imagined possible. All ships, he said, quietly stand down, signal surrender to the human fleet. As his remaining vessels powered down their weapons, Thakmor realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just changed. These humans were not traitors or diplomats. They were not another peaceful species to be bullied and enslaved. They were apex predators. And the Korach had just learned what it felt like to be prey. The human ships moved in to secure their prisoners. Their movement still precise and coordinated. There was no celebration, no gloating. They went about their work with the calm efficiency of professionals who had done this many times before. Thak slumped in his command chair and waited for the humans to board his ship. They had called for backup and the humans had responded with overwhelming force. The galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant Marcus Webb guided his fighter through the wreckage of a Korak destroyer, his targeting system already locking onto the next enemy ship. Around him, hundreds of other human fighters moved in perfect coordination, their attacks precisely timed to maximize damage while minimizing risk. Red Squadron, form up. On me, came the voice of his squadron leader over the comm. We're going after that cruiser. Marcus pulled his fighter into formation with 11 other ships, their engines synchronized as they accelerated toward the Korak vessel. The cruiser was trying to escape, its engines glowing as it desperately sought to reach the edge of the battle zone. Target their engine pods, the squadron leader ordered. We want this one intact. For interrogation, Marcus smiled inside his helmet. The Korfak had built their ships for intimidation, all sharp angles and aggressive styling, but they were slow and clumsy compared to human fighters. His craft could turn inside their weapon arcs and strike before they could even track him. He lined up his shot and fired a burst of precise energy bolts. The Korfak cruiser's port engine exploded in a shower of sparks, sending the massive ship into an uncontrolled spin. The other fighters in his squadron followed up, systematically destroying the remaining engines until the cruiser was dead in space. Good work, Red Squadron, came Admiral Chen's voice over the command frequency. Move to assist Blue Squadron with the remaining destroyers. Marcus pulled his fighter around and headed toward the next target. Behind him he could see the massive bulk of the human fleet engaging the Korak in a battle that was already decided. The enemy had started with 50 ships. Now they had maybe 15 still fighting, and those were scattered and demoralized. The human fleet moved like a single organism. The carriers launched endless waves of fighters while staying safely behind the battle line. The destroyers worked in packs, surrounding and destroying larger Korfak vessels with coordinated attacks. Battleships provided heavy fire support, their massive guns reaching out to enemy ships from long range. It was beautiful in a deadly sort of way. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold. With professional satisfaction, her fleet was performing exactly as trained, each ship fulfilling its role in the larger plan. The Korek were brave fighters, she had to give them that, but bravery meant nothing against superior tactics and technology. Admiral Commander Jackson reported, the Korak flagship is requesting surrender terms. About time, Chin replied. Signal all ships to cease fire on vessels that have surrendered but keep weapons locked on. Anyone still fighting? She watched as more Kork's ships powered down their weapons and shields. The smart ones were giving up, the stubborn ones were being systematically destroyed by her fleet. Marine shuttles are requesting permission to begin boarding operations. Jackson added, granted, but I want full combat teams. The Korek may try to fight even after surrendering. Colonel Maria Santos led the first wave of Marines. Boarding the Korek flagship, her team moved through the airlocks with weapons ready, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found corridors full of wounded and demoralized Korek warriors. The aliens were larger than humans with thick gray skin and natural armor plating, but they looked at the human Marines with something that might have been fear. Word of the battle had spread through their ship. An entire Korek raiding fleet had been destroyed in less than 2 hours by enemies they had never heard of. Secure the bridge, Santos ordered her team. I want their commander alive for questioning. They found Commander Thackamore slumped in his command chair, staring at the tactical displays that showed the destruction of his fleet. When he saw the human Marines enter his bridge, he straightened up and tried to look dignified. I am Commander Thackamore of the Korech Empire, he said in heavily accented galactic standard. I demand to be treated according to the rules of war. Santos looked at him through her helmet visor. You attacked civilians, you took prisoners for slavery, you don't get to demand anything. She turned to her sergeant. Secure the computer systems. I want everything downloaded, ship logs, tactical databases, communication records, everything. As her Marines went to work, Santos studied the Korfak commander. He was trying to project authority, but she could see the fear in his eyes. His species had been raiding and enslaving others for generations, but they had never faced real opposition. How many did you capture? She asked. 3,000, the Moor replied. Reluctantly, they are unharmed. We do not damage valuable merchandise. Santos felt anger surge through her, but she kept her voice level. You're going to help us find them, all of them, and you're going to help us get them home safely. And if I refuse? Santos smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then we'll ask your crew. I'm sure someone will be more cooperative than you on another Korfak ship. Sergeant David Kim was discovering just how thorough the human attack had been. The enemy vessel had been disabled, not destroyed. Its weapons were offline, its engines dead, but its life support was still functioning. The Korfak crew was alive but helpless. How did they do this? One of the Korfak officers asked. In broken galactic standard, your ships, they are so fast, so precise, it is impossible. Kim checked his weapon and continued searching the ship for holdouts. Not impossible, just practiced. But the intelligence report said humans are peaceful traders and explorers. Kim laughed. We are peaceful. This is us being peaceful. You should see us when we're angry. The Korek officer looked confused, so Kim decided to explain. You Attack civilians, innocent people who never hurt anyone. That made us angry. This, he gestured around the disabled ship, this is us being restrained. Meanwhile, in the medical bay of the human carrier Valkyrie, Dr. Jennifer Hayes was treating the first group of rescued Vanny. The aliens were in bad condition, showing signs of stress and malnutrition from their brief captivity. But they were alive and they were free. How many humans came? Asked one of the Vanny refugees, a young female with large frightened eyes. 200 ships, Dr. Hayes replied as she treated a burn on the alien's arm. About 50,000 people. Total, the eyes grew even larger, 50,000. For us, for anyone who needs help, Dr. Hayes said simply, that's what we do. She had seen the intelligence reports about the Korek Empire. They control dozens of star systems through fear and slavery. They had been operating for centuries without serious opposition, because most galactic civilizations preferred negotiation to war. Humanity preferred results. Doctor, her assistant called out, we're getting more refugees from the other ships. Looks like the Marines found the main holding area. Dr. Hayes nodded and prepared for the next wave of patients. Around her, the medical team worked with efficient compassion, treating injuries and trauma with equal skill. These Fanny would go home to their families, the Korfak would face justice, and the galaxy would learn that some species still believed in protecting the innocent. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen was receiving final reports from her fleet commanders. Korek fleet completely neutralized. Captain Rodriguez reported from the carrier Valkyrie, 37 ships destroyed, 13 captured intact, all Vanny prisoners recovered alive. Casualties? Chen asked. Minor damage to 6 of our ships, 17 wounded, no fatalities. Chen nodded. The battle had gone better than even her most optimistic projections. The Korfak had been completely outmatched, not just in numbers but in technology and tactics. Begin salvage operations, she ordered. I want those Korek ships studied, their technology, their databases, their communication codes, everything. She turned to look at the tactical display where the wreckage of the Korfak fleet drifted among the stars. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The Korek Empire was vast, with hundreds of ships and thousands of slaves. Today's victory was just the first step, but it was an important step. The galaxy would see what had happened here. They would see that the Korfak could be beaten, that slavers and raiders were not invincible, and they would see that humanity was not just another peaceful species of traitors. They were the galaxy's new apex predators, and they had just announced their presence with overwhelming force. Ambassador Kethar of the Galactic Council stood in the emergency session chamber, watching the recording for the third time on the massive central screen. The battle at Kepler's Rest played out in silent majesty. 200 human ships appearing from hyperspace, forming perfect battle lines, and then systematically destroying a core raiding fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. How many ships did you say the humans sent? Asked Ambassador Velter from the Hegemony Worlds. 2 according to our sensors, Cathar replied, still staring at the screen, plus fighter craft, support vessels, and approximately 50,000 military personnel. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Every species represented in the council had read the same intelligence reports about humanity. a peaceful race of traders and explorers who had recently achieved faster than light travel. Their admission to the council 6 months ago had been routine, almost boring. This changes everything, said Ambassador Zorak from the Crystal Republics. If they humans can deploy this kind of force for a simple rescue mission, what else are they capable of? Keithar did not answer. Immediately, he was thinking about the human ambassador, Sarah Martinez, who always sat quietly during council meetings and never raised objections to any proposals. She had seemed so reasonable, so diplomatic. Had she known, had she been sitting there planning for war while everyone else talked about trade agreements? We need to contact the human government immediately, announced Ambassador Feldor from the merchant guilds. This action was taken without council approval. There must be consequences. Consequences? Keith looked at his colleague with disbelief. They saved 3,000 Vanni civilians from slavery. They defeated the most dangerous raiding fleet in this sector. What consequences would you suggest? They deployed a battle fleet without informing the council. Feldor insisted. That violates several treaties about military operations in neutral space. The argument was interrupted by the chamber doors opening. Ambassador Martinez walked in, flanked by 2 human aides. She looked exactly the same as always, calm, professional, and completely unintimidating. But now Cathar found himself studying her more carefully, looking for signs of the warrior species that had just revealed itself to the galaxy. Honored ambassadors, Martinez said, taking her place at the human delegation's table. I understand you have questions about recent events at Kepler's Rest. Question? Ambassador Feldor was practically sputtering. Your people deployed a war fleet without permission. This is a violation of what exactly? Martinez interrupted, her voice still perfectly polite. The Council Charter clearly states that member species have the right to defend themselves and protect civilians from illegal aggression. The Korech attack on Kepler's Rest was both unprovoked and in violation of 17 different galactic laws. She activated a holographic display above her table showing detailed legal citations. The Vanni requested assistance. We provided it. End of story. Kithvar leaned forward. Ambassador Martinez, our intelligence report suggested that humanity possessed a small exploration fleet, perhaps a dozen ships at most. Where did this battle fleet come from? Martinez smiled, and for the first time Keithar thought he could see something predatory in her expression. Our intelligence reports were apparently incomplete. Humanity maintains a substantial military force for defensive purposes. Defensive. Ambassador Zorax's crystal carapace was glowing with agitation. 200 ships is not defensive. That is an invasion force, is it? Martinez asked mildly. The Korak brought 50 ships to attack civilians. We brought enough ships to stop them. Would you have preferred that we let the Vanni be enslaved? The chamber fell silent. None of them could argue with the result. They were free. The Korek raiding fleet was destroyed, and civilian casualties had been minimal. By any objective measure, the human response had been both effective and proportional, but it had also been terrifying. Meanwhile, in the Korech home system of Vorsh, Supreme Commander Grather was reading the reports from Kepler's Rest with growing horror. An entire raiding fleet destroyed in 2 Hours, 50 ships that had conquered dozens of worlds, reduced to scrap metal by an enemy they had never encountered before. How is this possible? He demanded of his intelligence chief. The humans are supposed to be weak, peaceful traders with no military experience. Intelligence was wrong, Supreme Commander, the chief replied nervously. It appears that humanity has been concealing their true capabilities. Grather studied the tactical analysis of the battle. The human ships had moved with precision that spoke of extensive training and experience. Their weapons technology was clearly superior to anything that Korak possessed. Most disturbing of all, they had won the battle without losing a single ship. What do we know about their fleet strength? He asked. Unknown, Supreme Commander. If they can deploy 200 ships for a rescue mission, their total fleet could be much larger, possibly thousands of vessels, thousands of ships. Grior felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The Korak Empire was built on the principle that superior force could overcome any opposition. But what happened when you encountered a force that was superior to yours? Cancel all raiding operations in human space, he ordered. Recall our fleets to defensive positions and send a diplomatic message to the human government. Tell them we wish to discuss terms. The intelligence chief looked shocked. Terms, Supreme Commander? We do not negotiate with our enemies. We do when they can destroy our entire fleet in 2 hours, Grather replied grimly. Back on the human home world of Earth, President Elena Vasquez was meeting with her military advisors in the secure briefing room beneath the Capitol building. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing ship positions throughout human space. The council session went about as expected, she told Admiral Chen, who had returned from Kepler's rest the day before. Lots of shock, some anger, and a great deal of fear. Any formal protest? Chen asked. Several, but nothing they can actually act on. We followed galactic law to the letter. Vasquez smiled. Your suggestion to record everything paid off. The legal department is very happy with the documentation. She turned to look at the star charts on the wall. Red markers showed known Korvac positions, while blue markers indicated human fleet deployments. What's our next move? The Korvac are already pulling back their raiding fleets, Chen reported. Our intelligence suggests they're concentrating forces around their core worlds. Classic defensive posture. They're scared, added General Morrison from the army. They thought they were the apex predators in this part of the galaxy. Now they know better. Vasquez nodded. And the other species? Mixed reactions, Chen replied. Some are grateful that someone finally stood up to the Korak. Others are worried about human intentions. A few are sending diplomatic feelers about possible alliance agreements. Good, that's exactly what we wanted. Vasquez had been planning for this moment since humanity first learned about the galactic community, a galaxy full of peaceful species terrorized by bullies and raiders with no one willing or able to fight back. It had been an opportunity too good to pass up. Ma'am. An aide entered the room with an urgent message. The government has sent a formal alliance proposal. They're offering exclusive trading rights and military basing agreements in exchange for protection. First Domino, Chen said. With satisfaction, Vasquez read the proposal quickly. Approved. Send them a positive response and begin negotiations. Immediately, she looked around the room. At her advisors, gentlemen, ladies, this is just the beginning. The galaxy spent centuries building a system based on diplomacy and negotiation, very civilized, very peaceful, and completely unable to deal with species that prefer violence. She stood up and walked to the star chart. We're going to change that system, not through conquest or intimidation, but by showing everyone that bullies can be stopped, that civilians can be protected, that there's an alternative to living in fear, and if other species object to our methods, asked General Morrison. Vasquez smiled. Then they can try to stop us, but I suspect most of them will be too busy asking for our help. On the bridge of the Indomitable, now patrolling the border between human and Corfax space, Admiral Chen was reading the latest intelligence reports. The Battle of Kepler's Rest, as it was already being called, had sent shock waves throughout the galaxy. Trade routes were shifting as merchants sought the protection of human space. Diplomatic missions were arriving daily with requests for assistance, and in the darker corners of the galaxy, raiders and slavers were having second thoughts about their career choices. Admiral Commander Jackson reported, "We're receiving a priority message from Earth. New orders." Chen read the message and smiled. Another distress call, this time from a mining colony under attack by pirates. The locals had specifically requested human assistance. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "We have work to do." As the human ships changed course toward their next mission, Chen reflected on how much the galaxy had changed in just a few days. They had called for backup, expecting maybe a few patrol ships. Instead, they had gotten a demonstration of what humanity could accomplish.